welcome to Partners in Law. I am Attorney Mary Rose S. Lubino, and with me is Attorney Angelica Fernandez Dumon, and we are members of the Cebu Lady Lawyers Association, and we will be your hosts for today's program.
Today, we have a very special guest with us who is an expert in civil registration laws and procedures. She's a graduate of the University of San Carlos and was recently conferred with the degree of Juris Doctor. She has been in the public service for almost 30 years or more, and she will be sharing with us her expertise today. So it's Attorney Evangeline Abatayo.
Hi, good day, Attorney Vanji.
Good morning.
So, yes, she's also the incumbent civil registrar of Cebu City for how many years now?
23 years in the city civil registrar's office plus 10 years with the legal office. So that's about 33 years in the Cebu City government.
Wow, so it's an honor for us to have you here in today's program. So, as the civil registrar in Cebu City, can you tell us about what exactly is civil registration?
Civil registration is the continuous, permanent, and compulsory recording of the vital events affecting the life of an individual, such as birth, death, marriage, legal instruments such as legitimation, acknowledgement, and court orders such as adoption before. But we have now a new law. Meaning we have a new law that directs all who wants to adopt to do it administratively.
So in that case, there's no more need to
go to court. Yeah, and adopt.
Ah, okay.
So, usually, attorney, for those administrative procedures, how long does it take?
For registration of legal civil registry documents, the birth and death certificates have to be registered within 30 days from the occurrence of the event. Meaning, from birth, 30 days, within 30 days, you have to have it registered. That's timely registration. And the death also 30 days from the date of death. Beyond that, that's already considered as a delayed registration. But for marriage, 15 days is the prescriptive period for a timely registered marriage with those with marriage licenses. But under exempting circumstance like Article 34, they have been living together for husband and wife for at least 5 years. The prescriptive period for the registration of the marriage certificate is 30 days from the date of marriage.
I see. So, murag, those are a lot of services being offered by the civil registrar, no? And civil registrar's office. May I ask, are these available for all individuals?
Yes, it is, but the registration is jurisdictional. As I said earlier, it has to be registered in the place where the event took place, like where the birth occurred. If the birth, death, and the marriage occurred in Cebu City, then it has to be registered in Cebu City. So if you ask for a local copy of those documents, be sure that you are registered in Cebu City and the event took place in Cebu City.
So, any transactions or processes must be tackled with the city where you were registered. Is that the case?
Yes, but we do cater for the request for issuance of a PSA copy of birth, death, and marriage because we have what we call as the BRACS, the Batch Request Entry System, where you request us to get a copy and then we will request for you to the PSA. And then you will just have to pick up the document before our office.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to queue or make an appointment online with the PSA.
How about if, in my case, Attorney Vanji, I was born in Zamboanga City and I'd like to get a copy of my my birth certificate. I could do that with the Civil Register of Cebu City.
Yes.
And if there are any corrections, let's say in my birth certificate, which happened to me before, Can I do that with you, or do I have to? I think it's impractical for me to go to Zamboanga City to have corrections.
There is what we call as a migrant petition, where you will have to file in the place where you, or the civil register of the place of your residence, and it's an office-to-office transaction. We will, you submit the documents to us, and we will forward it to the place of where you are registered.
Okay. So as a rule, if your birth, your death, your marriage took place in Cebu City, you can file in Cebu City. But for migrant petitioners, such as myself, in the case of my birth certificate, I can also request through your office. Is that correct?
Yes, you don't have, the law is being enacted to help those who cannot afford to go there with the transpo expenses and others.
I think, attorney, there's also online transactions with this kind of documents nowadays.
There is,
right?
yeah.
That's correct. Okay. So, attorney, as a civil registrar, and you've been with the office for more than 30 years, can you share to us what is one of the most unforgettable experience or transaction or situations that you were able to deal with?
Well, every 2 years, the PSA, because the Philippine Statistics Authority, the then NSO, they have technical supervision over us. So every 2 years, they will have an awarding of, in the national category, they classified the civil registrar's office into small, medium, large, and extra large category. We belong to the extra large category, and in 2015, in 2 years in a row, we got the first place national category as the outstanding civil registrar's office in the entire Philippines.
So that's your proudest moment, and
Yes.
perhaps the unforgettable. How
Yes.
about any opposite experience? Probably anything that you can share with us.
Challenges, perhaps, that you
Yeah,
encountered?
in 2019, in my 30 years in the service, that was the first time that I was being reassigned to another office. It was then that I was really dismayed, because under Republic Act 9048, which gives administrative authority for the civil registrar to make the necessary corrections in the certificates of birth, death, marriage, it is only the duly appointed civil registrar who can make the necessary corrections, on who is authorized to do so. But in 2019, I was reassigned. I don't know what was the cause, but it could have been political. But it was only around 7 months that I was brought back, reinstated to my post, because all the petitions for corrections and change of name forwarded to the PSA by the OIC, the then OIC, the one who replaced me in the office, was impugned, or were all impugned by the PSA, because the OIC does not have the authority to act on the petitions. So
So I guess it also worked both ways, that it was a challenge on your part, but it was also a realization that there was nobody else that could do it for you in terms of the signing of these legal documents. It was a validation, perhaps.
I think so.
Okay. So also, I think in the few years I've known you, you also championed the ISO certification. We have the Civil Office of the Civil Registrar is the only ISO certified department of Cebu City,
Wow.
and it is under Attorney Vanji's tutelage and initiative. So can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, there was this ISO consultant who was really dismayed by the services of a particular office. So she offered her services for free. And she wanted a certain office to be the pioneering, to be certified as the ISO office, yeah. But unfortunately, the one who is identified to go on an ISO certification process declined. So the second option was our office. It was then that we prepared for the ISO certification. It was such a tedious process, but with the help of the consultant, their services are for free. Now it's no more. There is,
They now have
yeah, they have the OBO is next in line to be the applicant for ISO certification, and the same consultants.
same consultant.
Yeah.
Around how many months or perhaps years did it take for you to complete the ISO certification?
The preparation took us around 2 years.
Oh, it's quite a long time.
Yeah.
Also.
with the documentation and everything, it's really hard, and even the third party accreditors, the auditors rather, they went physically from Manila to come to the office and do the audit. So it's really hard. It's so taxing.
For us who are not familiar with being ISO certified, what can you talk us through as to the processes that they audit and expectations now that you are an ISO certified department?
We have to prepare first the manual. We have the procedures manual,
Okay.
and we have then we have the procedures manual, and there are 3 manuals: the personnel manual, and I forgot the other one, but it's the procedures manual that is enshrined therein, that they have to check as to whether or not the procedure really is what the one being practiced. So if they ask for documents, you have to be ready to present that document. Otherwise, if you don't, it's you don't get the certification that you applied for. It's just like that. But if it's just an IC, meaning there's just an incompleteness, you have to, within 30 days, you have to comply the same, and after 30 days, having complied with the ICs or INCs, then you will get the certification. But we so far we have, I think this will be the 4th certifications that we will have. It's scheduled in August this month. For all the certifications, after the audit, we usually get the passing.
Is this an annual thing that they audit you, attorney, or is
It's-
something
it's-
a regular audit?
It's an annual audit.
I see.
So, being ISO certified, it means that there's a lot of taxing preparations on your end. So why go through it then? You're the only department in the LGU to have that ISO certification so far. But as you said, the preparations are taxing, it's tedious. So why go through it? What's the advantage of being an ISO certified department?
Well, it's just a bragging right. We were supposed to have some sort of an incentive to be given by the it's some sort of a support for a separate bonus.
Oh.
Cash incentive, but the ISO certification that we have, all the employees benefited from it because for the bonuses during Christmas.
But from the national, are you getting any?
No.
No?
None.
Okay. Attorney, just a quick question regarding having an ISO certification. Because you spoke about manuals, right, and procedures that they ask from you. So does this mean that those manuals would require a specific time frame for you to work on or accomplish requests made by the public?
Yes, and there is the person responsible. So if you are a client who's having a transaction in the office, if you check on the manual, you would see how soon can you get the requested berth, and you have every right to complain if the time prescribed therein has not been met.
Nice.
So, in your capacity as a civil registrar for the last 23 years, yes? So, are there any innovations that you have introduced in your department in terms of your services to the constituents of Cebu City? But that question, she will answer that after this short break.
Welcome back to Partners in Law. Before our break, we asked Attorney Vanji what are the innovations she has introduced in the Civil Registrar's Office of Cebu City. So, what are these, Attorney?
Okay. Before, when I assumed office in 2000, we don't have any building.
Okay.
But we have a separate building now consisting of 4 stories. And we have requested for the installation of an elevator because under the building code for a 3-story building, it's a requirement to have an elevator.
Yes.
We have the budget, but the POE is not yet done. Second, in order to be accessible, our services to be accessible to the public, we have this so-called City Hall at your doorsteps, where we go to the different barangays with schedules for those who have not been registered. We offer for delayed registration for free for indigent clients, residents, and we also give advices for corrections and for all other issues regarding civil registrations. We have this queuing machine, installation of the queuing system, because before we just have to have them fall in line, but now they have already their queuing number. Wherever they go, whether in the 2nd floor or in the 3rd floor, they have this number, and it will just show in the monitor. And that's about among those innovations that we had.
Okay. You mentioned about the building code. Just asking because for PWDs, for senior citizens who are having challenges or quite difficulties in coming up the stairs, so how do you address those type of clients?
We have the ramp.
Right.
And according to the DALG and the civil service, there is a standard specs for the ramp, so it should not be so steep. So we passed the specs on the ramp. For those who are on the wheelchairs, they will not use, while we have not yet the elevator, they will not use the staircase, but we will let them use the ramp.
Attorney, just for the information of our viewers, could you tell us where exactly is your office located?
The office is located at the back of the City Health building. We used to be housed in the same building with the City Health before we have that separate building. That's why when people say, I went to City Health, when they actually mean they went to the Civil Registrar's office. So because it has been housed in the City Health building.
When did you transfer, Attorney, to your own building?
In 2014, September 22. So we will be celebrating 9 years since the construction of the said building.
So you mentioned also about giving your services for free to our indigent clients. But if not indigent, do we have or do we charge them certain rates for whatever application or petition transactions that they may have?
For registration, if it's timely, it's all for free. But for all other transactions, we have in the Omnibus Tax Code the rates according to the services that we are to offer, and all of these are being receipted receipted because we have the personnel from the city treasurer's office will issue the receipts.
I see. So, for example, in the case of students, that was what happened to me. When I was a student and I wanted to correct my birth certificate, do you also charge or do you also prescribe them certain rates for their petition for correction?
That's beyond us because it's not our employees who will collect the fees. It's the employees from the treasurer's office.
I see. So, your employees have separate, they're not the ones collecting the fees. So in that case, there's no opportunity for them to,
No,
waive
no.
payment. And,
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So I guess we want to talk about a certain vital act that your department is very much responsible for recording, and this is the live birth because every day we grow in population. So in your very simple explanation for all our guests, what exactly do you mean by live birth?
Well, live birth is the complete expulsion or extraction of the fetus from that of the maternal womb, regardless of how many months it has been therein. But the live birth can only be considered as such if the fetus is in the maternal womb for 7 months or more and delivered live, although it dies within 24 hours. That's considered as live birth. But for those with an intrauterine life of less than 7 months, when delivered from the maternal womb and dies within 24 hours, it's not considered as live birth. But the same shall be, a live birth shall be prepared for statistical purposes but cannot be registered.
Can be registered.
So what is that called?
It's still a live
Live
birth in the
birth?
form, but there has to be a remarks that for statistical purposes only.
I see.
So, attorney, what if it was in the uterus for about 6 months, but then it lived more than 24 hours?
It's considered as live
Oh,
birth.
that's live birth.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if it dies within 24 hours, with less than 7 months in the maternal womb, it cannot be considered as such.
So again, if stillbirth, if what was extracted from the mother is already a dead fetus, in that case, what do we record it as?
Fetal death.
Fetal death.
But it's not a live birth. It's fetal death.
So what will be issued is
The fetal death.
fetal
Fetal
death
death.
certificate.
Yeah, but 7 months or more in the maternal womb, delivered live but dies within 24 hours, it's still considered as live birth with death certificate, the regular one.
I see.
Attorney, just to recap, how many days do we have to register a live birth in your office?
30 days from the date of birth.
And then
That's timely.
that's the timely registration. Okay. And if you go past that 30 days,
It's considered delayed registration, so you have to apply for delayed registration with the corresponding fee of 250 pesos as a penalty fee and all the other requirements.
Okay. You mentioned of reporting the fact of birth. So who is responsible in reporting that fact to your office?
When the child was delivered in the hospital or clinic, it is the administrator of the said hospital or clinic who is primarily or principally responsible to report the birth of the child. If outside of the hospital or clinic, it is the attendant at birth, be he a doctor, nurse, midwife, who has the principal responsibility to cause the registration of the child's birth. Or in default of the two, it is the parents.
What if those responsible persons fail to report the fact of death within the reglementary period? Is there any violation committed?
There is a violation of Act 3753, the Civil Registry Law.
And what is the corresponding sanction for that?
That civil registry law took effect in the, I think in the 1930s, so it's just very minimal.
Very minimal. But those penalties, attorney, are imposed against the hospital and those responsible to forward the registration, or is it imposed against the parents
No,
when they do the delayed registration?
No, it is actually the hospital administrator or the clinic administrator who has the primary responsibility. So if they don't submit the same or cause the registration of the said civil registry document, they are in violation or violating the Act 3753.
So in our also experience as I'd like to call for us as young lawyers, no, we've already experienced or encountered individuals who have registered their birth certificate late. What are the usual reasons or the factors that contribute to such fact high prevalence here in our country, the late registration?
It's the ignorance of the parents and the negligence, of the parents, because some of the hospitals, when we call them up to inform them that why are these live births delayed, and they would tell us, well, they were asked, especially for those illegitimate ones, the parents were asked to have the notarization of the admission of paternity or acknowledgement at the dorsal side of the COLB, but they did not return.
I see.
So they failed.
So
to cause the registration.
if there is any lacking material information in that certificate of live birth, that cannot cause the fact of registration?
It can be, because it has been the regulation of the PSA that we should only accept complete and correctly filled up information.
Okay. So there's absolutely no instance that an incomplete certificate of live birth can be recorded.
There is if the informant says that he or she doesn't know the information or data to be recorded.
Attorney, I'm just curious, like for those, because we have this like birthing clinics, right? So these are small clinics. Does the civil registrar's office like conduct any seminars or like require those clinics to actually know about your policies about the registration of the live birth certificates?
We have some seminars being conducted by our association. We have provincial associations of civil registrars, we have regional, and we have the National Association of Civil Registrars. We do conduct, but not all of them will register.
But that is not also a requirement for them to operate, attorney.
It's not, because it's beyond us.
Okay.
Ours is only for registration.
Okay, so I think we've also experienced in this day and age that there are strong independent women that have no partners, and that or their partners do not acknowledge their
Child.
offspring. Their offspring. So if in case, Attorney Vanji, in your experience, what if there's a change of heart in the father? The father did not acknowledge the child at birth, but later on did acknowledge the child. Can such acknowledgement of paternity can still be recorded even after the fact of birth?
It can still be, but we require for proof of paternity.
What is
Yes.
that proof?
While it's not really conclusive proof, but at least during prenatal, the doctor would say that this is I know personally that this is really the father of the child, or in the baptismal certificate, but it no longer holds true today, because even in baptism, the priest would ask for the birth certificate registered.
Yes, that's correct.
That was before. So that's why if the birth certificate is erroneous, necessarily the baptismal certificate is likewise erroneous. Because they only copy the data in the birth.
Correct me if I'm wrong, attorney. So you're saying that to as proof of paternity, an affidavit will be sufficient, like to recognize, not necessarily, to have a DNA test result, because we all know that not all individuals could afford DNA testing, right?
Yeah, one of the requirements is the affidavit. But any man, even if he's not the father, could do that.
Okay.
So we need additional, just an iota of proof that really the man who claims to be the father is at least the father based on the supporting document presented, especially if the child is already of age. How come it's only now?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So perhaps a witness to the conception. So I guess we will talk about. We will delve into some other vital act with respect to civil registration, and that is marriage. So where we left off with the mother and father relationship, but we will discuss more of that after this short break.
Welcome back. So before our break, we asked about the mother and the father of an offspring, right? So right now we're going to discuss about marriage and the requirements for entering into a marriage here in the Philippines. So attorney, I believe there's what you call a document called a marriage license before persons could actually enter into marriage. So first question, attorney, is there any specific age requirement to obtain a marriage license?
Under the family code, the applicant must be 18 years old, at least 18 years of age, both the male and the female. But prior to the family code, the marriageable age was 14 for women and 16 for men.
Wow.
So that's it. It's equal now, 18 up
For both
for
male.
both male and female.
So is there also a requirement, attorney, for a parental consent for marrying persons?
Yeah, for those applicants whose ages are between 18 to 21 years old, a parental consent is required. For those applicants whose ages are between 21 and one day to 25, we need parental advice. So without that, no application for marriage license could be accepted. There are several other requirements to be complied with before a license could be issued.
Attorney, just a question, because you mentioned about parental consent and parental advice. What's the difference of that, and what document perhaps is proof that there is a parental advice or parental consent?
We have the form in the office. A parental consent is, it has to be given by the father if the child is a legitimate one. But for the advice, both parents must sign the advice if illegitimate child is the applicant. So if the consent is not given, no marriage license application will be accepted. But for advice, if the parents refuse to give advice, or if the advice is unfavorable, the applicant would merely execute an affidavit that parental advice has been sought but was not given or unfavorable, and we will have to post that for 90 days plus the 10-day posting period. That's about 100 days. After the lapse of that 100-day period, the license will have to be issued.
I see.
Okay. So by no circumstance can one that is 18 to 21 marry without the parental consent?
No, there is no such thing as an affidavit. Just
so
like
no
the
affidavit.
for
No,
the consent requirement,
yes.
but for the advice there is.
Attorney, what if, because you mentioned earlier that the parental consent is issued by the father if it's if the person is a legitimate child, but say for example it's changed already. Was born as a legitimate child, but then perhaps the parents separated, and so she has no contact with the father. Can the mother be the one to give the parental consent? Mother alone?
We need proof that indeed the parents were separated in fact. Because, there are those whose parents may not have consented to the marriage, but the applicant would say, oh, I haven't seen any one of them. So it's not as easy as that.
Okay.
So we need proof.
Can you give us example of proof just for the information of our viewers who wants like to marry but then marry young but has that predicament? What proof can they present, attorney?
For instance, you have just presumptive death, perhaps, where the parents are no longer, they haven't seen it. They're in good faith for saying that. But there was one instance when the applicant says that I haven't seen my father. I said, okay, no marriage license will be issued if you cannot bring your father here. By tomorrow, she brought her father, and I told the father, oh, she told me that you are nowhere to be found. It's just like that. They will concoct stories just to get as easily as they can the marriage license.
So your office is quite strict on that, attorney?
Yeah.
She's quite strict on that. What if both parents are already dead?
Death certificate, present.
Death certificate.
Yeah.
But in that case, the 18 to 21 can still secure a marriage license.
Yes.
All right.
Because they have the guardian. The oldest of the siblings can execute an affidavit as, it's enshrined in the civil code, the substitute parental authority.
Okay, I see.
Are there any instances that you have issued perhaps a marriage license but thereafter revoked the same?
If the license is not used, or if the applicants failed to marry within 120 days from the date the license was issued, it is automatically canceled. They don't have to come to the office and say we have not. But if they decide to get married, they just have to bring the expired license with supporting documents attached thereto, and they will have to reapply and post it again for 10 days, and the license will be issued valid again for 120 days from the date it was issued.
Okay. Attorney, just a quick rundown. What are the documents that are required by the Civil Registrar's Office for one to obtain a marriage license?
First is the birth certificate. Actually, it's not really a stringent requirement, but for purposes of the data, we need that because age, the best proof of the age is the birth certificate. Then for those ages 18 to 21, the parental consent, the parental advice for those 21 to 25. Then we have the pre-marriage counseling seminar to be conducted by the City Health Department. And they have and the CENOMAR, Certificate of No Marriage, to be issued by the PSA. That the coverage is nationwide. That's nationwide, so they have to have the record that no marriage has ever taken place by the applicants. And the marriage application form. After that, if we have accepted the application, it will be posted for 10 days. On the 11th day, provided it's a working day, the license will have to be issued, which is valid for 120 days from the date it was issued, and it's valid in any part of the Philippines, meaning you can get married in any parts of the Philippines with a license having been issued.
Okay. How about in obtaining the marriage license, attorney? Say, for example, I live in Mandaue City, and example, my fiancé, although I'm married, example, your couple lives or is a resident of Cebu City. So where do we get our marriage license if we're from different cities?
The marriage license shall be applied in the place where either or both applicants habitually resides. So they can choose either in Mandaue or in Cebu City.
I see.
Are there any exceptions to the marriage license requirement?
There's none.
So everyone who intends to get married has to secure a marriage license.
Yes, and for those applicants who have been annulled, of course, the court decree with finality of the annulment shall be presented. For foreign nationals, we require an additional requirement of the photocopy of the biographic data and the entry date of his passport and the legal capacity or the certificate of no impediment from their embassy in the Philippines. However, due to the pandemic, there is a PSA memorandum circular requiring now the local notarization of the affidavit of legal capacity. It has been, there was a newly issued PSA memorandum circular that the local acceptance of the local notarization of the affidavit in lieu of the legal capacity for foreign nationals is only up to July 31. But 1 week after the issuance, there is another PSA order extending the acceptance of the local notarization up to October 31 this year
Alright.
for only 4 countries: UK, USA, Australia, and Canada.
So if you are citizens of those countries, it's sufficient to have a locally notarized certificate. Is that correct?
Yeah, but lately, there are those applicants who presented a certificate of no impediment or legal capacity from their embassy. So once we have accepted that, we don't accept local notarization. Only among the 4, only the USA no longer has not been issuing an affidavit of legal capacity. So local notarization will do.
Okay. So, but for foreigners, attorney, that certificate, you call it a certificate of legal capacity to contract marriage, is that different from a SENUMAR, or are they able to get a SENUMAR, or the SENUMAR is not applicable to them?
It's applicable to them because there are those foreigners who, after getting married, the Filipino national, they don't furnish copy to their embassy. So
okay.
the embassy doesn't know that they
They're
are
married
married.
here in the
So
Philippines.
if they have been married in the Philippines, the SENUMAR would reflect.
So they have to
Their
have
previous-
both
yes,
in that case.
yes.
Okay, I think that's a very good clarification for our viewers.
Just to make pound on that clarification, the certificate of legal capacity for foreign nationals is by no means a substitute for the marriage license.
It's a requirement.
It's a requirement, additional requirement for foreign nationals that intend to get married here in the Philippines, correct?
Yes.
I see. Okay. So speaking of foreigners, what if in the case of we have celebrity weddings, destination weddings, what if there's a Filipino couple intending to get married elsewhere or outside of the Philippines? What, are they still covered by our civil registration laws, or what's the practice for them?
The marriage, it's no longer a requirement for a marriage license for Filipino nationals to get married outside of the Philippines. But they can register the report of marriage. That's what we call report of marriage instead of the certificate of marriage if the event took place abroad. So they have to report it to the embassy or consular office in that country for them to get a copy of the PSA once it's already registered.
Oh, so so if they got married abroad and they report it to our consular office, then later on they will be able to secure a PSA copy of that marriage
Yes,
certificate.
because the consulate will cause the registration of the reports of birth, marriage, death to the PSA.
So not just weddings, but also other facts, vital events.
Yeah, but not all Filipinos know that.
Yes, exactly. Even I just learned of that, attorney, that even when you got married outside of the Philippines, you can still have a record and register it. But that is not mandatory. Like, I mean, for Filipinos who got married abroad, are they required by law to report their marriage to the consular or to the to our civil registrar
It's
here in
not
the Philippines?
actually obligatory on their part, but they wished because there are those who get married outside of the Philippines and they want a religious ratification of their marriage, then they would just show the copy of the report of marriage to the priest, perhaps, if they want to, so they don't have to apply again for a license.
Because another implication of that is that if I get married here, presuming I'm a celebrity, of course, and then I could get away or have a second wedding if I go abroad. Is that a legal implication? Does that follow?
You have already married here,
Yeah.
and you want to get married abroad.
Yes.
Well, under the Philippine law, your marriage here will prevail because if it has been registered, even if the event took place in the Philippines, both the civil and the church marriage, the official date of marriage should be the first marriage.
Okay.
So when you have a child and there is a date of marriage indicated in the certificate of live birth of the child, it has to be the one that is registered.
I see. Okay, so I think we have to wrap up. That is, time flew by, Again, our guest today is Attorney Evangeline Abatayo, the Civil Registrar of Cebu City, who is married to her job. As parting words, perhaps you can close our program with your aspirations and visions for the City Civil Registrar.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank you for having me here. It's an opportunity for me to share to the public what Civil Registrar office can offer to deliver the services with. Aspirations, well, we hope that election is coming and we hope that our personnel would still be there because it's so hard to train them, and then later on they will just be not renewed, or they will just be reassigned to another office. So hard, especially to maintain the ISO certification.
And I think it will also expedite processes for the public if there is not too much transition. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
True.
so we want continuity in the City Civil Registrar, and we thank you for watching us today. Again, I am Attorney Mary Rosas Lubino, and with me is Attorney Angelica Fernandez Dumon. Thank you for watching us, and thank you to our honored guest, Attorney Evangeline Abatayo, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.